The night was silent, but Gideon's heart was not. Hidden deep inside a winepress, the young man threshed wheat in secret, glancing left and right, hoping no Midianite scout had seen him. His hands were dusty, his breath uneven, and his faith flickering like a candle in the wind. He had heard the stories, how God delivered Israel from Egypt, how he parted the Red Sea. But those were ancient tales, and this was now. Now, the Israelites were broken. Now, the Midianites swarmed their land like locusts, stealing harvests, burning fields, leaving famine in their wake. And in that pit of fear, Gideon whispered words that would echo through eternity. If the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? Judges 6 verse 13. My Bible Stories Animated presents Gideon. The angel stood tall beneath the oak tree in Ophrah, his robe glimmering like morning light. Gideon didn't recognize him at first. He only saw a stranger watching him work. Then the voice spoke, calm, steady, yet filled with divine fire. The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor. Judges 6 verse 12. Mighty man? Gideon almost laughed. He wasn't mighty. He was the least in his father's house, and his clan, the weakest in Manasseh. He hid from his enemies, not fought them. But the angel's eyes held no mockery, only truth. Truth that called out not who Gideon was, but who he could be. Go in this your might, the angel said, and you shall save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? Judges 6 verse 14. Gideon's voice trembled. How can I save Israel? But before he could say more, the angel gave him a sign. Fire leapt from a rock, consuming the offering Gideon had placed. And in that moment, Gideon fell on his face, realizing he had seen the angel of the Lord. That night, Gideon's fear and faith wrestled. God commanded him to tear down his father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. So Gideon obeyed, but he did it by night, because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers yes even while trembling. At dawn, the town awoke to chaos. Baal's altar destroyed, the Asherah cut down. Who did this? They cried. And when the truth pointed to Gideon, they demanded his death. But his father, Joash, stood tall and said, if Baal really is a god, let him defend himself. And from that day, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, let Baal contend. Soon after, the Midianites and Amalekites gathered again, countless as sand in the valley of Jezreel. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. He blew the trumpet, and men rallied behind him, from Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. But doubt still gnawed at his heart. So Gideon turned to God again. Lord, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you said, look, I will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know. Morning came, and the fleece was wet, the ground dry. Still, Gideon asked once more, let it be dry on the fleece and wet on the ground. And God, patient and merciful, granted both signs. Because faith is not the absence of doubt. It is choosing to trust even when doubt screams loudest. When Gideon gathered his army, 32,000 men stood ready. But the Lord said, the people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel boast against me. Judges 7 verse 2. So Gideon announced, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return home. 22,000 men left. 10,000 remained. Still the Lord said, too many. He led them to the water. Those who knelt to drink were set aside, but those who lapped water with their hands, watchful, alert, were chosen. 300 men. That's all. 300 against an army that covered the valley like a sea of locusts. But Gideon understood now. Victory would not come from numbers, but from the Lord. That night, fear crept again at the edge of his thoughts. Then the Lord said, if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Gideon crept through the shadows. In the enemy's camp, tents stretched endlessly under the moonlight. He overheard 2 Midianite soldiers. One said, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread rolled into our camp and struck the tent so that it fell. The other replied, this can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon. God has delivered Midian into his hand. At that moment, Gideon fell to his knees and worshipped. The sign was enough. He returned to his camp and whispered command. "Arise, for the Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hands." He divided the 300 into 3 companies. Each man carried a trumpet, an empty jar, and a torch hidden inside. No swords, no shields, just faith and fire. At midnight, when the enemy was deep in sleep, Gideon raised his hand. The signal came. 300 trumpets blasted through the darkness. 300 jars shattered. 300 torches flared like sudden lightning. They shouted as one, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." Judges 7, verse 20. Panic tore through the Midianite camp. In confusion and terror, they turned their swords against one another. By dawn, the valley echoed not with war cries, but with silence. Israel's deliverance had come, not by might, nor by power, but by the Spirit of God. As Gideon pursued the fleeing kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, exhaustion gripped his men. Yet he pressed on, saying, "I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian." Judges 8, verse 4. He captured them and brought them low, the oppressors who had slain his own brothers. The people of Israel rejoiced. They said, "Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson." But Gideon refused. He said, "I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you." Judges 8, verse 23. He returned home, weary yet victorious. The land had peace for 40 years in his days. But even the strongest hearts can stumble. In gratitude, Gideon made an ephod, a golden vest-like idol, from the spoils of war. And the people of Israel turned to it, worshiping it as they once did Baal. The man who tore down idols had unknowingly built another. And when Gideon died, the people forgot the Lord again. They forgot the God who raised a fearful farmer into a fearless leader. Yet Gideon's story still speaks, not of perfection, but of possibility. Of what happens when God looks at a trembling soul and calls it mighty. When the world sees weakness, God sees a warrior. When you hide in the winepress, he still calls your name. And even if your faith feels small, smaller than a mustard seed, God can still make nations tremble. Because the same voice that spoke to Gideon still whispers today. "Peace be with you. Do not fear, you shall not die." Judges 6, verse 23. And the same Spirit that turned a fearful man into a deliverer still breathes courage into those who dare believe. So, when life's battles surround you, when doubt screams and fear paralyzes, remember Gideon. Remember the jars, the trumpets, the torches in the night. Remember the God who fights for you, even when your hands shake. Because the victory has never been about the strength of the warrior, but about the power of the one who called him.